get a lot of questions about how much wider are our clamps. Well, here's a stock one. Just give you guys an idea. Quite a bit wider. We're fitting a 8-inch wide front tire in here. Now, as you know, they pretty much go on just like OEM. Basically just do the opposite of what you did when you took the bike apart. And as you guys were seeing, I was putting a little bit of grease on the end of the bolt. Now, when we do this process, we still have to torque this upper stem bearing. In the first clip you guys saw, I was already preloading it. I was just trying to get a little bit of tension on there. Put a generous amount of grease on there, so you're gonna feel that when you're torquing the bearing. Now, the proper way to do this is to actually start from bottom and work your way up. Get your lowers tight. This is gonna draw this assembly up. Leave your top clamp completely loose. Torque your preload nut. And I like to get it so there is a little bit of tension on it. I can't stand handlebars that flop around. You get a lot of head shake. It's not a good time. And again, finally, once that's set the way you want it, you're gonna go ahead and torque this nut to factory specs. And then you're gonna go to the outside pinch bolts and you're gonna torque those to factory specs also. Now, a little tip for installing a motor and trying not to scratch your frame. Definitely get the tape out. You guys can see I've got that all taped up. I always, pretty much, if I can, I try to remove the exhaust studs. I can't stand when they're banging into the frame. I also like to pull the valve cover and basically anything else that's in my way. I forgot to turn the camera on when I was putting it in, so you guys didn't get to see me do it, but I actually like to pull the head in first, rotate the bottom over, and then drop it down. Our customer chose to go with a black frame, so that's why you guys see us doing the full teardown on this bad boy. But let's continue on. So now it's time to get the swing arm on. The reason I'm doing that is this bike is actually off balance right now. You can see it's tilting forward. If I was to pick this up, it would just tilt back forward again. So the goal for me when I'm putting a bike together, I just like to work my way to actually keep it balanced. So I always start with putting the engine in and the triple clamps, get the forks, and then go right to the swing arm. So everything was completely disassembled on this bike. We're gonna get the linkage on, and then we're gonna start installing our swing arm. All right guys, here's a look at the swing arm. So our customer actually chose some gold powder coat. I think it looks killer on here. We do a lot of this on the Trek swing arms too. We've already got the pivot bearings installed. Jack shaft is installed. This is obviously going to get adjusted to tighten the front chain. Now the big difference on this is you're going to run our chain block. So before you even slide it into the bike, go ahead and get that installed. They are also going to use a different linkage bolt. We use a different style tab on our swing arm. We're going to supply you guys with a heavier duty bolt, washer, nylon lock nut. I'll put a little bit of grease on this linkage bolt. All right guys, jack shaft time. Now we've done a couple videos on how to actually adjust this. However, I'm gonna try approaching this a different way. So I'm gonna back this off just a little bit. Now you're gonna start tapping that. You're gonna go, well shit, it's close to my shock. Now that's not a big deal. Put your shock. So you're taking one bolt out. Put your leg underneath the swing arm. And just support that. So you can see that slid forward about 1/4 inch. Right here guys, you can see it's past the nub. I'm gonna go ahead and rotate this forward. Just like that. Now this one's easier to get to. You can take a pair of needle nose and rotate that forward. Okay. We've got our chain. This comes pre-cut with the kit. Now, depending on your front sprocket size, this might vary a little bit, just like that. Got my master link, just like that. Don't have to put the clip on yet. We're just checking stuff, so I got it right here. Now that is a bit loose, so we're gonna go ahead and turn this back 1 notch. I've got this one pulled in. So you can see on this one, we've got the nub down here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 spots on the top. We're going the inside. We're gonna count 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sure they're equal. You can also get a visual across the top, kind of see about where they are. Okay, so we're not torquing that yet. Let's check for movement. I'm very happy with that. All right, so what I did there was I just squeezed the plate on. I'm just gonna put pressure inward and lock that on. Cool. All right. Very happy with that. Got our rear hub assembly here. So this comes pre-assembled in the center. We've already got the bearings pressed in. Everything is good to go there. However, for shipping purposes, this does have some assembly required. So we're going to start with sprocket adapter. So this is set up for Honda bolt pattern. Now we have some dowel pins on here. Let's start by inserting those. Take a little bit of grease. Just go around that flange where it's going to rest on that aluminum. So we've got the dowel pins on there. Everything's locked in. We've got our 6 bolts right here. We're going to go ahead and use some red Loctite on each of them. Long spacer goes on this side, on the chain side. Put a healthy amount of grease around it, inside and out. I even like to put it where it touches the swing arm. I'm gonna go ahead and actually put a little extra inside this seal here. I'm also gonna rub some on the bearings so the axle slides in nice. All right, there's that. Let's flip this over. Same deal, guys. So this is our new rotor adapter. We were tired of making them out of steel, so we decided to go ahead and do the billet one. So moving forward, that's going to be on all of our kits. Now, being this is hard to hang on to right now, when we get the wheel on, we're going to have it on the ground. We're going to go ahead and retorque all of these bolts. All this stuff's going to get torqued by hand once the wheel is on. It's the only way you can really hold it. The other way you can do it is put it in a vise and grab onto it, but you might mar it up unless you have a really thick rag on there. So I recommend just putting the wheel on it, getting it squared away, and doing all your torquing after. Now, the way we have our hub designed, our rotor adapter design, and our hub, the cutout on the wheel will fit right around it, just like that. Let's go ahead and retorque these now. All right, so now that you've got some leverage on the wheel, so we're gonna go 25 foot-pounds. It's more than enough on an 8mm bolt for this application. And again, you gotta have grease under the head or you're gonna get a false torque. All I'm doing is I'm just holding the tire. Now there's a shit ton of leverage right here, being a 25-inch diameter, so I can literally just grab it with one hand, use a torque wrench with the other. We're gonna go ahead and flip this over, torque the other side. We're gonna go to 35 foot-pounds on this side. Now, if you guys own a Honda, you're going to just take your sprocket and your bolts. You're going to reuse them. This customer had this pretty cool looking sprocket from Dirt Tricks on here. It's in great shape. We're going to go ahead and reuse it. I just have his bolts in a baggie right here. So that's going to go on here. Same thing on the opposite side. You're going to reuse your disc and your bolts. So let's go ahead and get back to time lapse. I'm going to get this wheel completely assembled and tightened up, and then on the bike. Okay, so as I've shown in past videos, keep in mind this tire, I mean, it's not like crazy heavy, but it is heavier than a normal dirt bike tire, being it's the big ATV style tire. So I'm gonna rest that right there. Instead of working harder than I have to, go ahead, we're gonna lower this lift down. Now, this is one reason I like these lifts. They just make my life easier. Got the chain block on there. Chain just is already in, don't forget that. So get your axle. So it's just barely poking out right there. All right, so we've got it flush. See how I can move it in and out? We've got our factory brake assembly right here. Make sure you've got your pad spread. Also make sure your sliders are moving. It's in good shape, so we're not gonna have to pull this apart and clean it. If you have an older bike, now's the time to take these sliders out. Get this all lubed up also. But again, this bike's in great shape, so we're not gonna mess with that. So we're gonna use the cutout on the disc. Allow me to actually work this over and clear the wheel. See the gap right here? We're just gonna work this down just like that. Now this locks into a groove on the swing arm, just like a normal dirt bike swing arm. So I've got that locked in right now. We always supply this shim right here, so I'm gonna go ahead and just slide that in, just like that. Give that a little love tap. Got your other axle block. Now you're still gonna have a little bit of a gap. When you go to tighten the swing arm, it's gonna pull it in. We do this so it's easier to install. We've had questions about that in the past. I don't want this thing so tight that you can't get your wheel in. That's another reason we do that. It just makes the install a lot easier. And once this thing compresses, it's actually going to pull the tire in line with the chain, and you'll be good to go. Always put some grease on your threads. Gotta put some grease on there. Got a brand new nut and washer. Just gonna snug it for now. And that's where we're gonna stop on the rear end for this moment. We're going to continue on to the front end and get this bike balanced out so it's got tires on both ends and go from there. It is front hub time. So this is our billet hub. This is a one-piece design. It comes loaded with bearings and seals. So the first thing we're gonna do, get some grease inside these seals. All right, now that we've got grease on our fingers, let's try to hit all of it. I'll put a little bit on the flange on the backside. Set it on here. Beautiful. I'm gonna go ahead and pre-grease the axle so it's ready. We've got our front axle, 17mm head. We've got 2 wheel spacers. They're both the same left and right on this model. So this one's gonna go on this side. Now we've got a reducer spacer. Also gonna apply some grease and get this ready. I'll show you where this goes after in the next clip. We're just gonna go ahead and get it ready for right now. Got our axle nut, our washer, and our lug nut set aside for now. So the most important step on this, guys, like I said, is getting some grease on this face right here where the bolts touch. I don't want you to get a false torque. So we've got our hold down bolts for the rotor adapter, applying some red Loctite. This is what we use. Beautiful. Like I was saying, guys, Same torque as the back rotor adapter. So we're gonna actually go back and torque this once the wheel's on, because I can't hold it right now unless I stick it in a vise. I don't want to do that. I just want to put the wheel on, use that for leverage. So I'm going to flip this over. I've already got the seal greased up, so I'll put a little bit more on this guy. There it is. So as you can see, this front hub assembly is pretty simple. Now this rotor adapter allows you to put your CRF front brake rotor on here, and I'll show you guys that in the next step. We're gonna go 25 foot-pounds on these rotor adapter bolts. So we supply some new bolts for the front rotor adapter. Make sure you've got your rotor on the correct direction. Now we actually have the threads on the rotor adapter. That's gonna save you from sticking your hand under here and trying to get your nut and washer on there. Go ahead and install the bolts with some red Loctite. So we're going to set the torque wrench to 15 foot-pounds on these bad boys. Now you guys might remember earlier I was talking about this reducer spacer. Now this guy is going to end up getting pushed pretty much like that all the way till this is almost flush. We're going to set it in the center. We're just going to pinch down one of these bolts just to hold it for now. This is considered a floating axle the way we have it designed. It can go left and right when that's loosened and when that's loosened. So we have it just kind of sitting there for now. Now, when you're working on your used bike, just clean all the dirt out of your fork holes. You don't want to have a grain of sand in there. Your axle will get stuck. It would not be a good time. So that, you guys can see that slid right in. Let's go ahead and get the tire installed. Go ahead and get the axle in. Like I was saying, it comes in from the brake side. Center up your axle to your fork. Be really careful. Just give it a little love tap. Just like that. So you're going to set your axle where it's flush right here. We're going to go ahead and just snug this real quick. It's a good starting point. Again, this is a floating axle that goes left and right. The reason for that is you've got to align your disc into your caliper bracket. Go ahead and snug this down a little bit more. I'll show you why in a second. See this gap right here? So you're going to go ahead and push this over. Close that gap up. So install your washer. I've already put a little bit of grease on these threads. I'm gonna go ahead and torque this to 40 foot-pounds. This is basically just putting side load on the bearings. Now we've got a bearing sleeve on the inside, so it's not actually gonna preload the bearings, but this is gonna lock your spacers to your axle, and then you're now gonna have your pinch bolts to move your tire left and right. So let's go ahead and torque this. So now we're gonna jack this back up. So like I said, your axle nut is already torqued, but your pinches need to be aligned. So this side is loose. And this side is loose. So now your axle will actually go left and right. See how I'm sliding the wheel left and right? Just like that. You might have to put a hand on each fork and push. This one's moving really nice. So the next step, we're going to go ahead and get our caliper installed. That's going to allow us to align our brake disc into the caliper bracket. For right now, guys, we're just going to rest the master cylinder on the lift. Now, I've got my brake pads spread. Sliders are working correctly. So now we're going to go ahead and install this. With a 12-inch wheel, you're not going to have to do any caliper clearancing like on the trike kits. So that's one plus of the big wheel. You guys can see how the brake disc is about in the center of that caliper bracket. Can actually come this way just a little bit. You can see there's a gap back here on that side. You want to make sure that is not rubbing that. And I'm going to try to get this thing as centered as I can. Check for your gap right here on each side. If you have any rubbing, depending on what tire you chose and what model bike you have, you may have to trim these up. This one clears just fine. We're happy with it. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Stay tuned for the next video because we're going to get this finished up, do a test ride, all that fun stuff. But right now I'm pretty excited with how this thing is actually turning out. It's going to look killer with this black frame, gold swing arm, of course all of our cool parts that we put on it. But if you guys enjoy this type of content, let me know. If you have any questions about installing any of our products, drop it in the comments. I hope I did a better job on this video of explaining step-by-step process of how everything goes. But I can't wait to take this bike for a rip, get it off to our customer. So again, stay tuned for the next video. We're gonna get this thing finished up and you guys see what the final build's gonna look like. See you soon.